CardGamesTV1 Podcast. The effect Zenkai cards are going to have in the game, or what I think about it. Personally, whenever they add something new to the game, it doesn't change the game up that much. Granted, people are going to be using the cards, people are going to be playing the game. Well, clearly the like, for example, I use what is it called, unisons were added to the game, and it definitely made it where we can do certain things. But the irony is that all they did was become permanents, basically, right? You put them on the board and they stay on the field for a long period of time until your opponent puts time and effort trying to get rid of it, which a lot of times wasn't worth it because it was just a waste of resources and time that you typically don't have, especially if you're playing competitively. So you typically just let the unison just stay there. And a lot of times the unison would be an advantage for your opponent, right? If it stays on the field too long, it becomes an advantage after a while. But one way of combating it was to play your own unison and gain advantage, your own advantage through that, and try to out advantage your opponent, right? Out resource them, outplay them. Sometimes it's through the effect of a counterplay, right? Obviously, stuff like gas ceiling trunks, without unisons, gas ceiling trunks wouldn't be that useful. One, your opponent would have to keep 5 energy up just to use gas ceiling trunks if it wasn't for the fact that unisons exist, right? Same thing goes with any of the other counterplays that requires a unison in order to play for free, obviously. Because imagine if you had to pay for those cards, they wouldn't be as popular as they currently are. So stuff like that, when you have cards like that people want to play, that forces them to play something else. Then of course inherently you're going to have that the new addition you add to the game is going to be used, right? It's going to become a part of the game, a normal part of the game. But the irony with that is that it causes the game not to change too much, because certain cards are just going to serve the same purpose as other cards, or they're just going to replace other cards, right? And then it just becomes the norm that way. But in people's minds, especially the way people play and stuff like that and build decks, not much is going to change, right? They're going to be using something different, right? But the reason they're using it is still going to be the same. It's still going to stay the same, right? It's not like Zenkai is going to add new methods of dealing damage or new methods of, of winning or anything like that, right? It's just going to do a lot of the same stuff that we already was doing, right? For example, one thing I do see that is going to be a little different when the Zenkai cards are added is the fact that you will always have access to certain tech cards, right? You won't have to try to main deck board wipes when you can always just have a Zenkai as a board wipe, right? And currently we do have one now. We do have one in blue. I think there's one in red as well. But obviously a lot of the cards haven't been spoiled yet. So we're still waiting, and we'll see what will and will not be popular, right? But obviously having something with board wipe capabilities, something with draw power abilities, something that can be used as a finisher, things like that, right? Might even have something that gives something an ability, a skill, like double strike or something. Like, oh, I play this Zenkai battle card or this Z leader, and now, bang, right? I give something double strike, and that thing that gave double strike is really strong, like ultimate or something. Let's say it's a 40k ultimate that can attack twice. Now you give it double strike. Now it can deal 2 damage twice, right? And it's 40k base power. So with that, you know, it's not that hard to, you know, turn something into a win con, and you always have access to it. So that's the only slight difference, is that you're guaranteed something, right? You're guaranteed to have something you can use. For example, the Gogeta Z leader, the fact that it's 100k printed, pretty much once you play it, it's going to act on your opponent's turn, because it's still going to be a 100k printed leader on your opponent's turn, right? It's going to still be, I mean, it's going to act like a Floodgate Negate or Baby Hatchback. It's going to act a lot like Baby Hatchback, right? It's going to act like a really, really strong Senzu Beam, basically, right? Just going to make it hard for your opponent to try to get over it to deal you damage. So there's a high probability that you're going to get another turn. So the fact that you can do that, like you can try to go for game, and it's like, ah, damn it, I was so close for winning, but my opponent was able to survive this turn, right? All right, especially as a counter. Let's say you try to go for game, right? And your opponent's like, Baby Hatchback, like, damn it. All right, let me see, would it work? Yeah, you could do it anytime, not just battle. If I'm right, I could be wrong, but if I'm right, you could just Z Awaken, even on your main phase, right? So you don't have to be in battle step in order to Z Awaken. Could be wrong. That Gogeta might specifically have to be played during battle, but if not, then you could just play it, right? And then end your turn. Now you have a 100k leader to protect you, especially from the 40k Baby Hatchback your opponent has on the other side of the field, right? So that could be like, that'd be your way of countering the fact that they drop a Baby Hatchback on you. So you could potentially get another turn out of that, and then on the next turn, you know, try to go for game, right? So that kind of stuff. So that's the you know, some of the things I see that's possible with you know, the Zenkai cards, the Z cards. I just call them Z cards. The Z cards is just that, you know, it's the fact that it's something there that you could rely on, especially the idea of being able to have a board wipe that you can rely on, especially if you end up in a scenario where your opponent prevented you from you know, start hand looping you or something like, right, hand destruction, and you have very little cards in your hands, or you end up with no cards in your hands. The fact that you can still, you know, play something, especially a board wipe on command, to kind of buy you an extra turn. So that's the thing. The fact that you can board wipe on, you know, at any time in the game, essentially, as long as you could afford it, right, comes in handy. Especially late game is when you really want the board wipe. That's when you need board wipes the most, is late game. It's like, all right, I need to survive one more turn. So then you board wipe and try to survive a turn. Especially if you're board wiping for the purpose of, you know, trying to stall, basically, right? The whole board wipe, end your turn, and then you're hoping your opponent takes their time charging in energy, playing some cards, activating effects, this, that, and the third, right? You know, attacking, comboing, you comboing, you know, all those steps, right? And hopefully that all adds up. Time-wise, it adds up to your opponent end up, you know, running out of time, and hopefully you have more life than your opponent and you win in time. That kind of stuff, right? So that's one of the many things that I see. I keep hearing something. There was this video about a launch deck, and I kept hearing something about burn, and I think it's a Z battle card that burns, and I like that. It's like, well, I'm definitely gonna be using that in my red decks, my Bomas and stuff like that. Use that card. I think it's a Super Saiyan 4 Goku Z battle card. So I have to go try to find, you know, a lot of the images for the Z cards, so that way I can have that way I can look at them and read them, and, you know, find out which ones are good. I only know a few of them that were that were spoiled. But there's other ones that were technically spoiled. They're just spoiled in different locations. I just gotta go find them, because there's a new 5-drop. I think it's 5-drop, right? Or they didn't have a cost. That's what it was. Didn't have a cost. But there's a new Hatchiak battle card. Definitely know it's not a Z card, so it's definitely a battle card. So it's like, it's a black battle card, it's a Hatchiak, and it's like, okay, we'll have to see what that does, see what that's about, see if it makes Hatchiak stronger, right? So we'll see. So it was just cool to see that that's a thing, but it's like you didn't know its effect. Like, there was no information. You just got an image, the borders, and that's it. So it's a black battle card, it's a Hatchiak card, but you don't know what it does, right? You don't know the power, the cost, or anything. I just assume it might be a 5-drop, or maybe a 3-drop. It definitely has to be between 3 and 7. So from 3-drop all the way up to a 7-drop. Or a 5-drop that could become an 8-drop, right? Obviously on how the leader works, because we have like one 5-drop that counts as an 8-drop. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a new version of that. But anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what Z cards, Z leaders, Z battle cards, even if they do Z unisons, I see a potential in that as Z unison. And, we'll see what happens with that. But realistically, all it is just basically a trump card, basically, right? It's just the idea that, like, at any given moment, as long as you have energy, right, Z energy and regular energy, there's options. And the interesting thing about this is that it can open up the potential of playing less cards or less specific cards in your deck, because you make up for it with your Z cards. So your Z cards will be, so another way of looking at it is that your Z deck will act like a side deck that you can use while you're playing, as opposed to pre-siding, right? The funny thing is you're gonna still have the ability to side deck, right? So you can pre-side best of 1 and still have access to tech cards, spice, as they say. So it's just gonna be a spice deck. That's all it really is. We're just gonna tech in some spice into our Z decks and then go from there, which is not that big of a deal. It's gonna be good. I'm not saying that it's it's like, oh, this is bad, no one's gonna use this stuff. It's like, oh, obviously people are gonna use it and abuse it, but for me, it's like, it's not gonna change the game that much. The game is still gonna be played the same way. It's still gonna be the same basic shit, same concepts, the same outcomes, right? The same win cons is gonna still be the same. Like, not much is gonna change when the Z cards come in. But there's a lot of people there that they just see it as the game changing. Just because it's some new shit being added to the game, they think the game is changing fundamentally. It's like, no, fundamentally the game is not changing. The game hasn't even changed since it came out, right? It has barely changed, because that's why we still use a whole bunch of cards from set 1 and 2, because the game hasn't changed that much. But a lot of people see it as the game has changed because, one, they're chasing new archetypes. Whenever a new set drops, they just want to play this stuff on the new set. They'll take in some old school spice, some cards from old sets to boost up these new decks, but that's about it. Other than that, they're just chasing what's new. So for them, in their mind, the game is changing, the game is different. Like, oh, we got unisons now, that makes the game so different. It's like, oh, not really. It gives us something else to do, yes, but it doesn't change the core aspect of the game. We still got to do attacks and negates and combo and and stuff like that, and try to outsmart our opponent, right, by playing things that have dual attacks. So that way it makes their negates not as effective, right? where they have to use floodgate negates instead of regular single one attack negating effect, because dual attack can attack twice, right? So stopping the first attack means nothing because there's a second one. And let's say you don't have the ability to negate the attacks, then there's 2 attacks coming your way. So it's like, you know, you're screwed either way, you know, and that's all it is. You know, we're always going to try to find ways to overcome things, right? We're always going to try to find solutions to problems. Yeah, let me pause for a second. Zenkai. What about Zenkai? What makes Zenkai so good that making people go crazy for Zenkai? It's just funny that people want, you know, certain leaders, certain cards to be banned and stuff like that. It's like, okay, that's excessive. I'm not against, like, you know, like restricting and whatnot certain cards if they become too problematic, especially if it promotes the idea of, you know, you have to play a certain deck. There's no point in playing anything else, right? Type of environment. You know, we want some level of diversity. You know, it just makes it more fun that way. When you have, you know, 80% of the format is one specific deck, then you know there's a problem. And usually that's when Bandai or any other card company comes in and tries to, you know, balance things out, try to make it where it's like the percentage of what's being played isn't, you know, one specific deck or leader or whatnot. They want, you know, they want to promote a certain level of variety. Because think about the irony that a lot of people could be playing Hatchak right now, right? They could be playing Hatchak. And that literally what all the games would be, just basically just Hatchak mirror matches. But it's not, and largely it's because of the player base, right? Which is why it always annoys me when players try to blame, you know, the card company, right? Bandai, for, in this example, or try to blame Bandai for, you know, what people are playing, you know, what, you know, is broken or tier 0 or whatever. And that's bullshit, because it's the players to decide what they play, what they don't play. You know, clearly most people know that I seem to play different than how everybody else plays, which is why I still play certain old leaders while people keep jumping onto the new leaders. Whenever a new set comes, they want to try out the new stuff, even though I've mentioned it before, nothing's really new. Everything is just a reskinned, a remade, a remixed, right? Whatever you want to call it, repainted, you know, redesigned version of things of the past, right? Old stuff, you know. Like, for example, Gamma 1 and 2 is just trying to be the new Super Saiyan 3 Goku, right? Leader, right? The new Crimson Warrior Goku, right? Pretty much is the new Soul Striker, you know, or pseudo Soul Striker, Soul Striker 2.0, whatever you want to call it, right? It's like, yeah. And there's going to be another deck that's going to be like, oh, that's Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, right? That's a ramp leader, right? That's a leader that ramps, right? There's going to be stuff like that, right? You know, aggro decks are aggro decks, control decks are control decks, and the list goes on. How every deck is pretty much the same deck. It just looks different, that's all, right? Like a unison deck that uses a lot of unisons, but it grows very aggro, and, you know, it's still an aggro deck, right? It's an aggro deck. It's just, okay, you're going aggro with unisons. Whoop-de-freaking do. They're just a different type of card, but it's still the same premise, right? You're still playing a whole bunch of things to attack with, so nothing really new there. You know, if you play aggro, you know, you already know how to play that strategy, because that's pretty basic strategy. It's just aggro, but with different card types. Just like field control, right? Field card control, right? Using those field extra cards, right? and having some type of engine where you could just recycle and just do the same thing over and over again. It's not that different from many other engines, not that different from many other decks that, you know, have reusable resources, right? So then it just becomes a resource game. There's leaders out there that are similar, or at least there's strategies out there that are similar to like Hatchiak, right? Like, for example, Android 21 that brings out, and Android 18 that brings out the Android 21 Scheme Field card. Pretty much, it's like the blue version of Hatchiak. Essentially, it's a strategy that slows the game down, so it definitely hurts aggro players. Then you just throw in, you know, a Majin Buu Unison, and then now you have a draw engine, energy untap engine, right? A lot like Soul Striker, right? Plus you got a blocker, plus an attacker, right? So, and then of course you have an ability that you can use on your opponent's turn. So, you just got a lot of power there, slowing your opponent down, controlling your opponent's board. So it's not that, you know, it's not that surprising, you know, with the right, you know, setup of cards and the right leader, you can mimic the abilities of another leader, the strength of another deck. Like, for example, you know, there's leaders specifically with the intention of a mill strategy, but then some people was able to take Android 21 and Android 18 and make a mill deck out of it. You know what I mean? They were able to exploit a certain aspect. Now it's been errated, the full power Frieza that's used in the mill strategy, because it's busted, obviously. So since she's a turn 5 win con, if everything works, you know, plays itself out properly, right? But they errated it so it doesn't hit tokens, so has drastically weakened that strategy. You can still play the strategy, it just won't be as powerful as it, you know, once was, right? But just look at the way that it wasn't originally meant to be mill, but people made it into mill. And you know, one aspect of mill is being able to slow your opponent down, slow the game down, right? Keep your defenses up so you can stay in the game long enough to mill your opponent out. Either by them drawing a whole bunch of cards, or you making them mill and they drawing a bunch of cards, you know, that combination, and them running out of cards, right? And hopefully they're playing a 50 card deck while you play a 60 card deck. So that way they mill, they deck out before you do. So there's stuff like that. But of course, you know, time rules is a thing. So if you don't mill them fast enough, hopefully you make sure their life is less than yours so that we can win in time. Because, you know, that's a thing. And I've experienced losing to time, even though I had the advantage. And I was just one attack away from winning. Time gets called and it's like, oh, that's unfortunate. That got in the way. But I've been practicing, obviously, getting good with playing within 30 minutes and doing the most within 30 minutes. So that's a thing. So that's what I'm saying, is like Zenkai stuff will add to certain strategies, will add to, you know, to the game, but won't drastically change the game. It'll add to the game, but won't change. The thing I hate is when people try to act like the game is complicated. It's like, oh my god, these new things are gonna make the game even more complicated. It's like the game is not even complicated in the first place. It's not rocket science. I would know. It's not rocket science. The game is not like chess, right? It's not complicated. It's not infinite possibilities. There's a lot you can do in the game, yes, but it all boils down to the same thing. Because there's more than one way to get to a certain outcome. It's just a matter of time, right? You either mill your opponent fast, or you mill them slow, or you deal them a lot of damage fast, or you deal them a lot of damage slow, right? It's one or the other. So you either do it quickly or slowly. That's about it. So like I said, the game is simple. It's like, do you want to, win with catastrophic blow, or do you want to, win by paying 16 energy with your Beerus leader and just automatically win? Like, it's up to you to decide how you want to win and how fast or slow you want to do it, right? Now, obviously, with time being a factor, like competitively, you want to win fast, obviously. And then there's also the fact that, multiple rounds, you might be tired, especially if you travel to the event, and then you have to stay at the event for, a long period of time. Then you got to travel back home, so you might not want to spend too much time playing, so you rather win fast or lose fast, right? One of those two outcomes, because the game is going to end in one way or another, right? Winning or losing. It just, you rather it be faster than slower, right? You've probably been in a scenario where, even if you won, you weren't happy because it took so long. It's like, damn, this took me like an hour and a half in order to win this game. I should have been able to win faster than that. So then you gotta look back at deck, look back at the duel, right, the match, and see what you can do to speed it up, right? But like I said, since time is a factor in tournaments, you gotta, when you play test, right, you want to play test with time, because that's important. Like, the way the game feels totally different when you don't have that much time. When you don't have that much time, the game feels different. Like, just recently, I played a game, and I took a little too long to play certain cards, make certain decisions, and that cost me literally time. It cost me time that would have helped me to win out the game. So I ended up losing in time in that scenario. But if I didn't take too long in those other turns, it would have been different. Obviously, I can also, be like, well, my opponent also took long to play their turn, so that further reduced my time. But that's the thing, is like, you can't control how much time your opponent wastes, but you can control how much time you waste. So you don't want to waste that much time. You want to conserve as much time as possible. You want to get the most out of your time, right? And that's where turn ramping comes into play, where you're trying to speed up your turns, right? Not trying to take too long on your turn, but definitely don't want your opponent to take too long on their turn. So you want to try to speed things up a little bit. So practicing that strategy, practicing making it where your opponent has to end their turn faster than they normally would, because normally they might want to take long, but you want to speed things up. And of course, the way you do that is through card effects. You can't be telling your opponent, oh, you slow play, you play faster, right? That's just a little ignorant. Sometimes people just do it at the wrong time. They do it like, I had a scenario like that where somebody kept telling me that I'm slow playing, even though I wasn't. It's just that I wasn't playing it as fast as he wanted me to, because he wanted to rush me. So that's the thing, he was rushing me. Not that I was slow playing, he was just rushing me. So that's the thing. And there are some people who are, a little narcissistic. I've noticed that, who feel like they definitely have the game in the bag. I don't know where they get that idea sometimes. They don't realize that they're actually in a disadvantage, that I'm in the winning position, not them. And then they try to rush me. I remember that, one guy I was playing against, he was trying to rush me pretty bad, but doesn't realize, like, okay, you want me to speed up my turn, but this is my kill turn. I'm going to drop turn into tides. Right now I'm just trying to draw into it. I have everything I need for turning the tide. I just need the turning the tide himself. So right now I'm activating the effects. I'm drawing this and that third, trying to get to the turning the tide. And then I drew it. Then I played it. Then it was game. Then he wanted to rush over to the next game real quick. Like, okay, you're in a hurry to get to the next game, huh? You probably thought you were gonna win this game, this game, but you didn't, because I turned the tide you. And that's the thing. It's like, it's pointless to try to rush me. Trying to just rush me through saying that I'm slow playing, right? So accusing me of slow playing, so that way, he can be like, that way he can act like he wasn't rushing me, right? It's the reverse psychology concept, right? Accusing me of slow playing, so that way I would try to play faster, which means I can make mistakes, I can misplay. That's what he's hoping for. He's hoping that I'll, be like, oh, I'm not slow playing. Don't say I'm slow playing and try to play faster. It's like, nah, I don't fall for them tricks. And trick me. I know I'm not slow playing because you are. So I know the difference between slow playing and not slow playing. And I know I don't try to take too long to play my turns anyway, because I already have my turns planned out ahead of time before we even played this game. Months, years in advance, I already know what I'm going to do on turn 3, turn 4, right? Turn 1, turn 2. Like, I already know what I'm going to do on all these turns. I know what I'm going to do on turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, right? I already know what I plan to do. Whether I do it or not, that's up to me, obviously. But typically, I do 9 out of 10 times. I'm going to do what I plan to do. Turn 4, I'm going to play my 4 drop. Turn 5, I'm going to play my 5 drop, right? As an example. Turn 7, turn and tide, right? As an example. So I already know what I'm going to do before I do it. So that's not up for debate. The thing is that I notice a lot of players have a habit of thinking that, every turn it's different. Every turn, they have to play that turn differently than they normally do. It's like, no, play your 3 drop on turn 3, play your 4 drop on turn 4. Just play the deck the way you build it to be played. Don't worry about what your opponent is doing, unless they're doing something like really, really problematic, where it's like, yeah, I can't ignore that. That will cost me the game. If I ignore it, then that's different. Obviously, I'm not against pivoting, right? I'm not against changing your plans based off of what your opponent does. But a lot of times, I'll say 7 out of 10 times, you're going to just play your 4 drop on turn 4. There's those three chances, right? 3 possibilities, right? 3 times, that you'll probably have to play something different. Probably play a 3 drop and keep 1 energy up for a negate or something, right? As an example. So there are times where you have to change what you're doing. But other than that, typically, you don't have to change much. Right? You just play what you're going to play. This is why it's always annoying when some people look at my decks and then negatively judge my decks, not realizing what my decks is capable of. It's like if they knew how I think, they knew how I play, which is why I built the decks the way I built them, then they will understand, like, oh, okay, this is why you play these cards and you built this deck this way or that way. What's ironic is I've shown time and time again how consistent I am on being able to do 6 to 7 damage, that it's like I don't need to do much. I don't need to play too many things. I don't need to play God-Sealing Trunks or anything like that, right? I don't have to play tech cards or spice or cards specifically to help me deal with certain problematic cards. Like, I don't need a card specifically for turning the tides, or a card specifically for Cell Zeno, or a card specifically for a hand control deck, or so forth. So like, I don't need to play anything specifically for specific situations, specific matchups, right? I'll just play some good generic stuff, right? I'll play cards that can get rid of battle cards with, ignoring barrier, in case I end up going up against some, a battle card that has barrier, or 2 of them, right? I'll play stuff that lets me draw cards. Why not, right? Drawing cards is good, obviously. But, if I end up going against hand control, well, good thing I have a whole bunch of cards to draw cards. Because hand control is going to be a problem, right? If I don't, I can't beat my opponent if I don't have cards to beat them with, right? So it's good that I have draw cards. That's why, saving your leader's awaken ability, if your leader draws 2 cards when it awakens, it's a good idea to save that. I've been promoting that idea for a long time. Like, those people who literally laughed at me, made fun of me for the whole not awakening idea. The whole idea of like, I try not to awaken early, or sometimes not even at all. Like, I try to save my awaken, and they thought that was a crazy idea, like that was stupid. And they try to make fun of me for that. It's like, what? Try to say I'm a bad player for not wanting to awaken my leader. I'm like, what? Are you even listening to what I'm saying, to the reason for it? I'm not saying that, I don't like to awaken my leader because I like how cool the front side of my leader looks. So that's why I don't awaken, because it looks, the art on the front looks so cool. Like, I'm not, coming up with a stupid reason for not awakening my leader. No, I'm giving a good, legit reason to not awaken my leader, because I use my leader's awaken ability for a combo or a strategy. It's part of my win con. Untapping 2 energy is part of my deck's win con, right? As an example. So I will save it for that. Or drawing 2 cards in case my opponent drops Cell Zeno on me. That'd be the best time to, wait, when he attacks, obviously awaken, draw 2 cards, and then go from there, and make the most of it. Because at least I have 2 extra cards after I lost 3 cards, right? If somebody drops Perfect Force Cell and drops my 30 card hand down to 3 cards, having a leader that draws 2 cards when it awakens will be very helpful in that situation. Or if I'm in a scenario where my opponent only have 2 cards in my hands, and let's say there were negates, and then my opponent rebrands me, now I lost both those cards, now I can't defend myself. It'll be nice to have a leader that awakens, draw 2 cards, and hopefully give me a fighting chance. Hopefully I can out-combo the attack, or at least survive that attack going through, and then be able, hopefully I drew a negate, right, and use that negate on the next attack. Hopefully a floodgate negate, like an Oceanus or something, or a baby Hatchek or something, to help me survive that turn, right? So it's just funny that people wanted to make fun of me for saying that, I don't try to awaken my leader. It's not always necessary to awaken a leader early in the game. It's better to save it for the right moment. And it's funny how that was a joke. Like, that was funny. Like, oh, that's stupid. Why would you not awaken your leader early? Like, that's dumb. You're a bad player. Blah blah blah. It's like, what? No, that says something different. That doesn't say I'm bad at the game or I'm dumb. That says you're a bad player. You're dumb. That's what that says. Because you're disagreeing with me without even understanding me. But oh well. Which is why, like when I talk about like Zenkai, the Z cards is not going to change the game that much. I said that much. Not that it's not going to, the game's not going to be a little different because, well, obviously it's going to be a little different because we're going to have different, extra cards we can play with. We're going to have cards, we're going to have essentially an extra deck like in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? We're going to have access to cards we can play at any given time in the game without having them in our hands in the first place. So that's a, reliable, always available resource. That's powerful. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and I was using the extra deck when it used to be called a fusion deck, and I was using it before anyone else, was actually using it, right? One of the few people in the beginning that was actually using the fusion deck before Elemental Heroes was a thing and this, that, and third, and everybody else started using the extra deck. I was already using it. So I'm already a fan of the idea of having access to cards, whenever I feel like it, whenever I need it. Essentially a toolbox. So the Z deck is essentially a toolbox. It's my version of a side deck. Since I don't actually use a side deck, I'm obviously a fan of an extra deck where I can put some spice, put a board wipe in there whenever I need it, right? So it's like, oh, time to board wipe. Boom, play board wipe from my Z deck instead of playing something from my hand, right? I'm gonna use it. I'm not saying that like, oh, that's not gonna change the game much, so I'm not gonna use these cards. Like, no, I'm gonna use these cards. I already have my eyes on a couple cards. I am looking for other cards. Definitely, we just got some black Z cards, so that's nice. Plus some new black cards in general. For Hatchiak, we got a nice black unison that has a board wipe ability, so that's gonna be nice. Obviously, mono black Hatchiak is gonna enjoy that unison. That's gonna be a staple in Hatchiak, among other things. Like I said, there's some new toys. There's a new Dark Broly. Hatchiak might play it. I mean, any black deck will more likely play it because it has some effects. Sorry. So it's a good card, so I do expect more players to play it. Plus, it has the ability that when you play it, you can warp one of your opponent's battle cards, so obviously that'd be good in Hatchiak, especially in a Hatchiak deck where the deck warps a lot. That would be a good card. Warp. Definitely be good in Mass, in the Mass King archetype. What else? Zenkai. What new Zenkai stuff? Well, I mentioned there are, some Zenkai leaders. It's going to be interesting. There's a Zenkai Janemba leader, so, and I'm already been tweaking with, working out, I've been messing with mill Janemba, right? So the Janemba mill deck, so I've already been working on that, and I hope, depending on the ruling, I'm hoping that the 5 cost ruling does not apply to the Z deck. That'd be awesome. If the leader's permanent does not apply to the Z deck, then you can have 5 cost, 6 cost, 7 cost, right? Z battle cards. So that's gonna be interesting. Oh shit! I didn't double check. Oh snap! Oh no, but that doesn't change much of anything. Well, we'll see. I was gonna say like, oh shit, the new Janemba leader, if I'm right, doesn't have the restriction where you can't have 5 costs or higher in your deck. But the thing is when you start the game off, you automatically just can't have 5 costs or higher in your deck. But doesn't say in your decks or Z deck or whatever, right? Unless they want to errata the Janemba leader and include the Z deck. I hope they don't, so that way I can have access to a 5-drop board wipe. That'd be cool. So obviously these are types of things we're looking into. So the Z cards are going to power boost. I agree, they're going to Zenkai boost a lot of decks and strategies, and they're going to make certain decks bring back, they're going to make certain old decks viable again. But that's what always happens with like new sets, new mechanics, new cards, new card types. They tend to bring back, bring old strategies back to life. But again, since they're old strategies, the game ain't changing that much. It's like, okay, we're just going back to doing things the way we used to do it. So we're not really moving forward whenever new shit comes out. We tend to move backwards when new shit comes out because it makes the old shit better, right? We look back in the past and look through the card pool and find some old spice, right? Some old good, some goodies, cards that weren't that good but now are good. And we tend to, every time we take 1 step forward, we take 2 steps back. So that's why it's funny to be like, oh, the game, it's going to change, it's going to be different. It's like, no, we're going to take 2 steps back, so the game is not going to be different than the past. It's going to be, we're going to take 2 steps back, so we're just going to go back to an older format where we were playing a certain way. Like for a long while, people were like, oh yeah, aggro's dead, and look at us now, aggro. So it's like, no, every time we take one step forward, we're always taking 2 steps back. Ironically, I just don't take that many steps forward. I prefer to stay in the back, right? I prefer the old school cards. I look towards the future for potential possibilities of cards coming out that upgrades and power up my old decks, the decks that I like and play. Because think about it, there ain't that many Hat Shack leaders, for example. There's only one. I would like them to make a couple more, right? That way there'd be some variety. That way I could play a different Hat Shack. That way when I say, I'm playing Hat Shack, no one is like, Hat Shack. Because there's only one Hat Shack. So of course, people, when I say Hat Shack, everybody already knows, like, oh, that Hat Shack. There's only one Hat Shack, so clearly I already know what you're playing. Like, yeah. But if we have more than one Hat Shack leader in the game, then it's like, you don't know which one unless I tell you which one it is, right? Plus, I would like to just, see something different, right? Like, what else can we do with Hat Shack, right? If the first Hat Shack leader has a floodgate, right, ability that makes it hard for your opponent to attack with a lot of battle cards, right? Basically anti-aggro. What other anti Hat Shack deck can you build? Can you make an technically we have anti-mill, because Hat Shack already has cards you can main deck that can make you put cards back in your deck, so that's already anti-mill. So the deck is already anti-mill, anti-aggro, right? Anti-attacking a lot, but it's not anti-unison, right, per se. It's not anti-hand control per se. It's not anti-burn. Not anti-double strike or triple strike, that kind of stuff. So it's like, it'd be interesting to see if they create a new leader that has certain effects that just makes it harder to do certain things. Because the way I look at Hat Shack is he's kind of like Doomsday, right? He's meant to be a kryptonite to the meta, as it were, right? So since the game is largely aggro, like that's the core of the game is aggro, just attacking a lot, trying to do a lot of damage real quick, and then there's control and mill and so forth, right? Then it makes sense that he started off the way he started off, being anti-aggro, but it'd be interesting control and burn and all that other stuff. Anti-auto win con, so you could literally not lose to the Beerus effect or some shit like that, right? That'd be interesting. Anti-graveyard hates or you get the idea. They could do different stuff with it. We'll see. But like I said, I personally don't see the game changing that much. We're gonna get some new stuff that we'll be able to play and enjoy, and this is long overdue. Getting an extra card in the game is something I've been asking for a long time, and a lot of people are like, no, this game is not like Yu-Gi-Oh, so no, we're not gonna have that. And y'all wrong, I'm right, as always. And that's the end of the podcast.